This is Daniel Coosbury, and this is the first video in a series of videos meant to help us introduce ourselves to fundamental ideas of statistics and probability. So as this is the first video, we're going to start with some really basic terms that we're going to use throughout this entire course that we're going to need to understand well so that we can talk about things and understand things well. So let's go ahead and begin. This technology is a little new to me. There we go. All right, so the first big terms are going to be population and sample. So the population refers to an entire collection of individuals of interest. So if you're doing a study, you've got some sort of group or people or like animal or some sort of bacteria, like you got some sort of thing in mind that you're going to call your population. That's going to be all of the things that you're interested in. And I'm going to draw a little drawing for you down here. I represent the population by a big box, and that represents everything. Now, typically you don't usually know everything about a population right off the top of your head. So, for instance, think about the population of the United States. For instance, do you know things about every individual in the country, every member of the population? No, you don't. Nevertheless, we can use a term to describe the population. And our goal in statistics is going to be to learn as much as we can about a population without really knowing like each individual person or each individual thing. So what we're going to do when we do statistical studies is we're going to start by drawing a sample out of that population. And if in the next video we'll look at ways to draw samples, but this is my little video. This is my little drawing sample. So we have a population of things we're interested in, and we don't know about every member in there, but we want to know things about the population. So we're going to draw a sample out of there. The sample is a subset of the population that contains individuals that are actually observed. So typically the population refers to things the whole group, things we don't know everything about. The sample are things we actually know about. Their numbers that we have, or their information that we have about everybody in the sample. Now, statistics uses information from a sample to make inferences about an entire population. So by the end of this course, we're going to have a few methods for using information that we know from a sample to make really, really, really educated guesses, be about as sure as we can possibly be about the entire population. So that's going to be the goal. Let's look at a kind of a flip side term. There is a way to actually know things about every single member of the population. And when it comes to the people in America, we call this a census. So a census occurs when information about every member of a population is collected or observed. We do this, I think, every 10 years because the Constitution tells us to. So it is a thing. And so, for instance, if you want to know, I don't know, the age of every single person in the country at one time, you can take a census, or the government will. But the thing is, it's not always the most practical thing. So I like to think of statistics in this way. If our goal is to learn about a population, why don't we just take a census every time we want to learn something new? Well, there's a few answers to that. For instance, we don't do a census in America except for every 10 years, in part because it's an incredibly expensive process. It costs so much money to call people and knock on doors and to mail out things to like all the hundreds of thousands of people in the country. It's just not practical. So one reason we don't usually take censi, anybody know how to say that? It's not practical. Another reason we might not be able to take a census is I worked with someone in grad school who was working with fish and was measuring some sort of hormone level in fish. And it was a certain type of fish, and I think they're all about a certain age. But the thing is, they need to use statistics so they can make inferences about all the kinds of fish. Because here's the thing about fish. They live in freshwater ponds and lakes and rivers. Some fish live in oceans. Some fish live in both. And the fact of the matter is, if you have even just a pond or an ocean, like, is it possible to collect every single fish out of that pond or ocean and measure the hormone content that's in them? No, it's not. So she had to use statistics because to answer her question about this type of fish, getting all the fish was frankly not possible. It's impossible. But the good thing is statisticians have developed methods of taking samples out of population. So this is my picture. Take a sample out of population and then use what we know in that sample to make inferences about the population. So that's what statistics is. That's what this class is all about. Okay, 2 more basic terms, and that'll be the end of this video. This one's a short one. Let me draw the picture again because I like the picture. So this is my population, whatever it is. Let's call that fish this time. So that's all the fish in the world. And this is a sample drawn out. So these are fish that I catch with a net or with a rod. And maybe I want to know the mean hormone level of the fish. So the mean of something. We'll get to this term later in this course, but mean is also the average of things. So like on average, what's the hormone level in all these kinds of fish all over the world? We have a special symbol for mean when we're talking about all the fish in all the world and the whole population. Our symbol for population mean is mu. So if we're talking about the average of everybody in the population of all the fish, we're going to use the word mu. Another example, if we're talking about the population of Americans and their average age, the entire population, the thing we'd use to describe the average age would be this letter mu, the mean. This is what we call a parameter. So a parameter is a number that describes a population. So any number that refers to things in this box, everything entirely, is called a parameter. This is kind of easy to keep forward because there's a P here and a P here. Parameters describe the population. A statistic, on the other hand, describes a sample. So the idea is if we don't have all the fish in the world, there's no way we can actually know the mean concentration of this hormone. But we can take a sample and we can find the mean of that sample because we know everything there is to know about the things in this sample because we caught them and we can weigh them and measure things. So we can actually know the sample mean. We represent the sample mean by X bar. There's a little bar over an X, so we call it X bar. This is called the sample mean, which we'll get to later. This is an example of a statistic. It's a number that describes a sample. So this is something we can actually find using the information in the sample. This is something we don't actually know, but we want to know. It's a parameter that describes a population. So in the realm of statistics, we're going to be dealing a lot with populations and samples and using statistics to guess what parameters are. And I'm probably just going to have to end the video here because that's like where we're going down the road. There's a lot of preliminary things to get through first. So I hope you enjoy the ride.